On April 1st, 2020, Ace of Hearts released Fool for You, a single for their upcoming EP Monophobia. Over the course of the next months and years, they released singles Silver Lining and Lights Off, and the Scorpion Queen EP, all building to the album Frozen in Time. And here we are today, 2 years later. So today, I'd like to break down A Life Frozen in Time, the 7-minute closer to the album, and arguably the most important song to understand the story of Ace of Hearts' music. The first thing we see in the song is Ace on his bed looking at a snow globe. Remember this, it becomes important. The first lyric we get is,
I remember when you asked me to live a life frozen in time.
Wow, that's the name of the album! And it's a pretty important metaphor too, describing his romance as one being stuck in the beginning, where it seemed perfect, never having to move on, like he clearly still wants during Lights Off.
Could it mean that we just didn't know how to be alone?
Pretty clearly reveals the concept that maybe they only stayed together for so long just because they couldn't handle being alone. A sentiment mirrored during Monophobia too. Is a pretty clear refutation of the idea that bad relationships can always be fixed with more time, since some romances were just never meant to be, like this one here.
Telling all my friends, goddamn guys, this is it. Oh, how naive I was back then.
Is another great refutation of the idea that perfect romances exist, and now Ace has realized how naive it was to think that his fairy tale love would never end. This is supported by the next line.
Why did I think this wouldn't end?
Hindsight's 2020, my guy. The last line of this section,
Everything is changing. Everything is changing now.
could be referencing the Life Frozen in Time motif, and foreshadowing that it wasn't going to stay a perfect romance for much longer, because they aren't ready for things to change. It's important to notice how this section flips between Ace in his room and scenes from Silver Lining, showing the two of them happy together, another song about reminiscing on the past. Ace then leaves his house and enters into the next part of the song. The second act of the song mainly shows Ace reminiscing more and coming to grips with his past. The first line,
Dance with me, my loneliness. Sing with me and reminisce.
could be a reference to both Deep Space and Find Me in Your Dreams, as he dances with his girlfriend in the former and sings a duet with her in the latter, but it wasn't the duet he wanted. The verse,
And we can play fairy tales forever. But as an everyday endeavor.
relates to the idea of wanting to stay in a perfect romance forever, every day. But it's a fairy tale, and he knows that now.
Or spend our lives waiting on the floor.
Shows his fear of wasting time and never finding the one, the main theme of All the Rain and Monophobia too. This verse is so important, it gets repeated later on to really drive home the message that we're all just settling.
Fight for me, our fantasy.
Relates back to Find Me in Your Dreams, which I already covered and would take too long to explain, so just watch that video instead. The next pre-chorus is very important too. The line,
I can promise you I won't ever stop loving you.
seems innocuous enough, but it's vital to understanding the song. He and his girlfriend split 7 songs ago, and he spent all that time trying to get over it, but he didn't. He still believes he'll never stop loving her, refusing to move on. This theme is something I'll come back to, since there's a lot to unpack. The final part has Ace at a party, seemingly surrounded by people and friends, having a good time, but he's still alone, mirroring Queen of Everything. No one talks to him or notices the very noticeable soliloquy.
Ooh, tell me why I feel so alone tonight.
And also, consider that these people were paid to ignore him. That's a sweet gig. The next lyric,
Waiting by my phone, acting like I'm on my own.
could be a reference to waiting for your call, still waiting for her to call him, and believes she's still there for him. And now we have come to the final verse.
I remember when you asked me to live a life frozen in time. San Francisco piers and snow globe souvenirs. Oh, why can't we just call it home? Why can we not call it?
The more vigilant among you might have realized that it's the same as the intro and takes place in the same place, his room. This is vitally important to understanding this album, and something we need to talk about. Normally, for an album closer, you want to have some sort of closure or finishing remark to really show what the point of the album was. We don't get that here. Instead, we get Ace doubling down on his previous mentality. And to be clear, this was by intention. During the course of the 7 minutes, he goes to so many different places around San Francisco, but ends up right back where he started, singing the same words. He calls back to a ton of different songs in the album, letting us know that no matter how much it seems like he's changed, he hasn't. We might expect for the album to show him moving on and becoming happier, but it doesn't. Instead, just showing him going through different coping mechanisms, like his reminiscing in Silver Lining or One Night Stand in Monophobia 2 and Your Name, but never actually moving on for the better. Our best look at what a healthy version of him would be is Deadbeat Boulevard, because at least he's recognizing his part in the relationship falling apart, instead of the anger shown in Queen of Everything. But no, the album ends with a distinct and purposeful lack of closure. And I like it that way. Frozen in Time isn't just a collection of songs, it's telling a human story. And human stories rarely end neatly with the main character learning their lesson and changing for the better. Well, that's a sour note to end on. So why not like and subscribe to make it a little sweeter? Thanks. Anyway, Frozen in Time is really a masterclass in storytelling, and I plan to break down the rest of the album in due time. I really can't wait to see what Ace of Hearts has in store for us, and let's pray for a single or EP soon. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next whenever to talk about whatever.